Taylor Swift gets engaged. Resource development projects in Canada. Maybe we'll actually do some now. Has Trump gone full fascist? And Alberta pulls books from schools. We'll talk about it. It's the Line Podcast. I don't actually... Jen, I have nothing actually to say about Taylor Swift.
Oh, are you telling me that we just put that in the intro in order to get people to click on the thing, and we're just maximizing our SEO there shamelessly and without? Okay, that's fine. Look, I mean, there's not a lot else to talk about. I mean, before we started this podcast,
it's a great week for her to get engaged.
It's a great week. She really nailed that timing. But of course, you would expect that from Taylor Swift. So, look, we are obviously in the final countdown to the return to school and the return to normal civic life in Canada. It has been a brutally slow season.
Are your kids back at school?
No, not till next week.
Okay, same with mine. Yeah,
not till next week. So we're on the struggle bus to try and find stuff to talk about. But as we were discussing this, Matt, it both came to our attention that we probably shouldn't be on the struggle bus looking for things to talk about, because aren't we supposed to be on a wartime footing? All hands on deck? Sort of seems like everyone's still on vacation to me, but I don't know.
I mean, at the risk of repeating myself from what I've been saying over the last few months, this is kind of what I'm waiting for. And, we had a rebuttal to something I wrote this week saying Carney's actually pretty much on time. Yeah, maybe not. I'm very agnostic about this, but we, the Canadian people, the collective we, were promised wartime government for existential threats to our government, to our way of life, our sovereignty, blah, blah, blah. And here we are. What do we usually do the date? We're recording this Friday, the 29th of August, 2025. I'm not seeing the wartime yet.
Well, okay. So let's put a pin in that. Let's come back to that, because there's a couple of things for us to talk about, couple of light things. One, there was a trip by Carney to Germany.
And I think a few other places in Europe, but Germany was where the news came from.
Germany was the big one. I'm going to pull out the Prime Minister of Canada's readout on that one. I'm going to go scroll down. So in Berlin, Canada and Germany signed a joint declaration of intent to deepen cooperation and secure critical mineral supply chains, increase collaboration on research and development, and co-fund new critical mineral projects that contribute to a range of industries, yada, yada, yada. To that end, Tim Hodgson announced Isabella Chan is going to become
energy minister, right? Is he energy or resources?
Tim is energy and natural resources.
Right. They combined it. Yeah,
that's right. Isabella Chan, who's going to be a special envoy to sort of foster that relationship. Couple things interesting about that. The first one is that isn't that an interesting and stark contrast to when both Chancellor of Germany and Prime Minister of Japan visited Canada in the wake of the Ukraine invasion? They were, coming in saying, "Holy shit, we need your resources," because Russia's decided to go to the bad place. And Canada's response was, "No business case. No business case for this." Well, it seems like this. I'm reading this, maybe wrongly, maybe rightly, as an attempt to rebuild the bridge thus burnt.
Yeah.
And to maybe foster some of those closer alliances, and understanding that perhaps we were too rash in our assessments previously. I think that is a really good and positive tone shift. I also note that you've got Tim Hodgson going in Canadian television defending natural gas. You've got people like the Polish ambassador doing interviews in Canadian television, pointing out things that you and I have been writing about for 15 years, which is like our 10-year war against ourselves to make sure a pipeline never gets built in this goddamn country. All that actually did was lock us into an interdependence with the United States, where they take our product at a discount and then sell it on the market for a huge profit. So good job us. That's literally all that accomplished. But finally people seem to be listening to that position. And I do think it is a pretty welcome change of pace to be hearing liberals and liberal leaders making this point.
So I read you and I, we know how to party at the Line, because Jen and I had independently read the prime ministerial readout of the meetings in Berlin. One of the, and I noticed the same thing you did, and I had the same conclusion you did, that this is an opportunity, a chance, or at least an effort to reset the tone of relations and almost to get a mulligan on that Trudeau answer. I think you're correct.
Yeah.
But what also jumped out at me reading it is, so it's like a joint release by the Prime Minister of Canada, the Chancellor of Germany, talking about resources and energy security and support for Ukraine, blah, 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 all the things you would expect them to say. But one of the things that was actually interesting is I was looking at like the tangible deliverables here, and there weren't like explicit commitments here. But if you put that ministerial statement into a chat GPT thing and said, boil it down to what actually is being pledged here, it's almost all internally Canadian. Like the Germans aren't going to fix this problem for us. Like the thrust of the statement basically comes down to the fact that Germany and Europe and other allies would love to buy Canadian stuff. And Canada is acknowledging that our allies would love to buy Canadian stuff, which is great. The problem is now Canadians have got to figure out a way to dig and pump and mine and extract and then export the stuff.
Yeah, which has always been the fundamental bottleneck. And, I mean, it's good that we got this relationship going, but yes, the problem is us. We are the problem. I mean, there's also one little side rant I want to have here about
sorry, before you do,
case.
The old saying, right? We have met the enemy and it is us.
The enemy is us. Yeah.
Mark Carney went to Europe and met the enemy. It's us.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there's one thing I did want to have a side rant about the quote unquote no business case conversation. Mm-hmm. That drove me fucking crazy. Do you want to know why?
I remember.
Do you want to know why that drove me crazy? Do you want to know what there was no business case for?
I do.
EV plants. And yet somehow we managed to come up with $13 billion to force these EV plant subsidies in southern Ontario, which, by the way, is looking like maybe not the smartest business investment post-Trump and the total abolishment of all of those all those EV mandates. Yeah. Mm. Oops. Looks like there was no business case for that. So, like, lots of countries do put money into things that aren't necessarily profitable because they serve a deeper and broader strategic interests. There's no business case for having a military, guys. We have one because we need one in order to maintain the alliances, the global alliances that we need in order to foster the trade alliances that make our goddamn civilization work. We live in a society, goddammit. I mean, there may not be a business case for an LNG plant to ship more liquid natural gas to Germany and Europe. There may not be a great business case for doing the same thing for critical minerals. But you want to know what there is a great case for? The strategic case for that. There's a strategic case for us to be building our friendships and our alliances and our relationships, financial and otherwise, with other nations. There's a strategic case for making Canada an invaluable source of necessary minerals and items and goods on the global market to our friends and allies, particularly if we're going back into a great bloc power alliance arrangement.
Which we are.
Which we dipshits.
Extremely face later.
Right. So, and also, hey, maybe there's no business case now, but there was no business case for the oil sands when we started pumping lots of money into research and development into the oil sands. It took time for the business case for that, for the profitability of those projects to become apparent, right? So, anyway, that's me. I'm going to take a drink of water now.
We are not even 11 minutes into the podcast, and Jen has done the first exasperated hair thing. See, I used to have hair. Then I recorded some podcasts in Canada. It was all gone.
I mean, look, that was a long-standing rant. Long-time listeners to the podcast will have heard that one before.
They've heard it before. It's okay. Couple things to say in reply to it. First of all, as to whether or not there's a business case for the military, well, let's wait 6 months, or let's see how segment 2 goes, because we're going to talk about some other stuff there, and then we'll decide whether or not we have a business case for the military. One of the things I remember at the time thinking about, and it's interesting because when Trudeau said that, I don't remember exactly when he said that. It was a couple of years ago. It was after Ukraine invasion, but I think it was before he kind of went into his terminal polling decline that led to his resignation. One of the interesting things that kind of occurred to me, but it only occurred to me in the abstract, I wish I'd written about it at the time because I would have looked brilliant if I had, was that there isn't always a great business case for Canada. Canada exists in spite of the fact that we are, generally speaking, quite culturally and politically similar to the absolute beating heart of global capitalism, and that it's about 2 hours that away. We chose for other reasons to do something else. And I agree with that decision. I like that decision. And I think as time goes on, I am more and more grateful we made that decision. But if we were just running the country on the notion of a business case, is there a country? And when Trudeau had said that, I remember at the time thinking, yeah, but come on. I mean, if we start doing business case assessments for the entire country, first of all, we're going to immediately put some sacred cows against the wall and shoot it. Like if we actually wanted to bring the rigor of a business case calculation to Canadian government, our supply management and our healthcare is probably like doesn't survive the first round of like firing squads. The other thing that just jumps to me though is that a country is not a business case, and countries that are business cases typically don't hold together long. There have been trading republics or mercantile city states. If you know your history, you know that there have been countries that have become extremely powerful. I mean, even the Dutch were once incredibly powerful because they had this sprawling global empire and it was a business case. Business cases do not translate into sustained, prolonged political longevity. I mean, right now, arguably, there's a reason we call Arabia Saudi Arabia right now, and it's because a family made a really good business case. No one expects that to still be the case in 100 years. Countries aren't business cases. I think it's so fascinating for Trudeau have made that comment maybe a year and a half before Trump showed up and started telling Trudeau, you know, the business case is for you guys to join. You'll get military protection. You'll be richer. It's going to be a great deal for Canadians. And all of a sudden, Trudeau is the guy arguing against the business case. Life comes at you fast.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I don't want to make this as a statement for we should be pissing away money at every single project that comes our way. Like we should be intelligent about how we're allocating our resources, and we should be able to show that there's a cost benefit of doing so. I just think we also need to be able to recognize that the cost benefit may not come in the form of profits. Yeah. There has to be a rational conversation about what the benefit of the project is. Like what are we getting out of it? And if what we're getting out of it is hugely cementing our alliances with Europe at a moment when America is going batshit and we don't know whether or not, you know, China is a reliable ally, it's probably not. That's a good benefit. But it's a benefit that can't necessarily be measured in short-term or even medium-term profitability. So that's okay as a country. You can make those calls, right? But just as long as you're not naive or stupid about putting money where there isn't a benefit. I mean, it's just very interesting to me and frustrating to me that the Liberals get really selective about when they choose to apply a business case metric. Like, please tell me what the business case is of all of your innovation superclusters.
I would like to know the business case for our telecom sector.
What's the business case for our telecom sector? What's the business case for supply managed and dairy? What's the business case
for keeping Delta out of domestic flights?
Yes.
I mean, there are other reasons not to fly Delta, but...
Well, sure. But like, what's the business case for a lot of the decisions that we made? But what was the business case for $13 billion of subsidies in EV plants? How's that stacking up for a business case? Like, you guys don't operate on a business case scenario. You operate on an ideological case scenario. You like these things. You don't like these things. You have both ideological, tribal, and sort of historical reasons for liking these things and not those things. And you make your decisions not on business case, but rather on vibes and feels. And like, I just want you to be fucking honest about that.
You know, look, I don't need to explain this to you, but just for a second, for the listeners and viewers, horseshoe theory, the idea that the further left and the further right you go, the more likely you are to actually come to the same conclusion. You come to them for different reasons, but you end up basically articulating the same thing. There's an interesting horseshoe theory when it comes to Canada, I find, between left and right. I am fiscally conservative. Personally, professionally, politically, I am fiscally conservative. But I also understand the role of strategic considerations in this. And I remember being in a meeting once with some old colleagues of mine for the National Post. And these guys were struggling to wrap their minds around the notion of strategic industries. Because to them, it was, why are we subsidizing this? Like their viewpoint was 100% business. And that's fine. Like that's a valid viewpoint. But I was trying to explain to them, would it have been good in 1939 for 100% of Allied torpedo production to have been in like Hamburg? And they were like, no. Okay, that's a strategic case. There are certain things you want the ability to have domestically because it could be used, like a lack of it can be used against you, or your enemy can monopolize it and then you don't have it in a shooting war or any kind of conflict, any kind of competition. And they were like, oh, yeah, okay. There's a blind spot in Canadian politics, and there's a right-wing version of it that worships business, and there's a left-wing version of it that worships kind of utopian idealism, that Canada is like a post-strategic country, that we don't need to think about these things. And there's different, well, actually, in almost a bizarre way, there is a horseshoe application of this where both left and right would argue, oh, the Americans will defend us. Now, the lefties would be more worried about American imperialism and the righties would be a little bit excited. But fundamentally, like, this is a country that has neglected thinking about everything. What are the dollars and cents of it? That's a valid business case analysis is valid. There's also a political case analysis, which is valid. But the missing piece is the strategic analysis. And I think what you're talking about there with the former prime minister is an example of a political case being made in the language of a business case with zero strategic case.
That's pretty much exactly right. Nailed it on the head. But anyway, look, I don't mean to fry old fish, so to speak. Instead, what I kind
they
of
could be delicious.
They could be.
Fish fry.
Fish fry. The point I think that we just wanted to point here is that the comparative slowness of the news is both understandable given where we are in the current calendar year, and also kind of unforgivable given the fact that we're supposed to be on wartime footing, moving on all fronts in order to shore up our strategic failures. That said, right. I do give Carney some credit for trying to rebuild the bridge in Germany. I'm giving Hodgson credit for creating a more liberal framework for supporting resource development and extraction, understanding that that's a huge part of Canada's strategic benefit, and we can no longer afford to be leaving our strategic assets in the ground. That's just what it is in the current environment. And I think on the whole, like I said, tonally, I'm on board with this government. We haven't seen follow through yet.
Tonally, this is me giving credit where it's due. And I will, people have asked me before, why will you never give Mark Carney credit? Here is me giving Mark Carney credit. I think he has correctly identified a lot of the big picture problems we have, and he is saying the right things about them. That's just not going to do it. He is getting the easy part right. And that's important. Now we need to see if he gets the hard part right, which is interesting because the major projects office is now opening. It's complicated, but this is the organization that's based in your hometown. It's out in Calgary. Its purpose is basically to identify the things that are in Canada's national, or if you will, strategic interests, and ram them forward on an accelerated time frame. Okay. In 2 years, we'll talk about it. We'll see if it's done anything.
See where we are.
I don't know.
2027. Coming back to I'll set a calendar alarm. 2027.
This episode of the Line Podcast brought to you by our new American overlords. Yeah, we'll see. So this is the stuff. What I do grant that Carney needs time to get stuff figured out. We'll see if this goes anywhere. The European jaunt to me was really, really interesting. And there was also an interesting one that you might have missed it a couple of weeks ago. Canada is very clearly trying to woo the Mexicans. I think the Mexicans are thus far unimpressed. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we're really sticking the landing on that slow-mo seduction, but I did see a couple of weeks ago just a statement from the government of Canada that some of our ministers would be heading down to Mexico to have talks about, deepening ties and the strategic relationship and the trade relationship. And I sarcastically tweeted that I'm also planning a visit to Mexico to deepen ties and trading relationships, thinking maybe around March break. So look, if we want to be working with Latin America and Europe, like I'm all for this here. But again, our problems are mostly internal. We can have the best friends all over the world, but if we can't dig shit out of the ground and send it to a port, we're no further ahead.
Agreed. And Matt, I will close the segment by giving you the benefit of the, or how should I say this? The Liberals haven't earned the benefit of the doubt. We've just seen 10 years of a government that mistakes announcements for results.
Yeah, the announcement is the plan.
The announcement is the plan, and then the re-announcement of the plan is the re-announcement of the plan to substitute the result. And our country has been severely weakened and degraded as a result of the Liberals' fundamental inability to follow through on a plan, deliverology, if you will. So I'm hoping that Carney sees that. I mean, he's a smart guy. I expect Carney actually sees that and understands that that's a problem. Can he actually push stuff forward? I mean, put it this way, I would be genuinely surprised and disappointed if we didn't see a flurry of activity starting sort of September 3rd and going right to Christmas break. Like, I am fully expecting that he has spent the summer lining up his little strategic armies, and that we are going to have lots to talk about every week.
That's the best case scenario.
As of next week.
Yeah, that is the best case scenario. And I've tried to be fair, and I don't know if I stuck the landing. That's up for other people to decide. I've tried to be fair every time I've talked about this and acknowledge this. For all I know, we are about to get a blitzkrieg of Carney announcements that are going to be basically in line with what I wanted. That's possible. But I did talk with a Liberal buddy of mine about a week ago who was kind of hinting that we were going to get some of that. He was saying, hey, I saw your latest podcast. You just wait. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like maybe, like 100%. But I also said to him, and he said to me, what would actually please you? And it was funny because you had asked a similar question last week. Last week. And I had said to him, I didn't answer the question exactly as he asked it, but one of the things I said to him was, what I think I need to see is that Carney is more than a difference in tone. Because if what we end up with are guys in more professional socks moving the deck chairs around the Titanic with like a renewed sense of energy and professionalism, and they're calling the Europeans and the Mexicans and the Australians as they move these deck chairs around, but then the fucking ship still sinks, we're no better off. So I just need to make sure that these guys are actually like bailing out the ship instead of just rearranging the deck chairs. One of the things I'm worried about is that, and I don't mean this as a knock on Carney, but I think you and I have seen this happen to politicians before. It doesn't take long for them to become unmoored from reality because they are like being a high level political leader. You are in a bubble. Yeah,
your understanding reality, of the world around you isn't normal.
Almost all of your experiences with the outside world are filtered through advisors, helpers and assistants, security personnel. Like Mark Carney probably is not going to like at like 11 o'clock at night go, fuck, we're at a coffee filters and like throw on some sweatpants and sneakers and go to like the Sobeys down the road. All your information is filtered. It's filtered by people who have their own biases and agendas. It's very possible Mark Carney could think he is in the midst of launching this historic turnaround of the Canadian society, government, whatever. But nothing is happening.
Nothing's happening.
So, and meanwhile, the people who are involved in this, especially Trudeau era holdovers, they could be like, my God, I've never worked harder. I've never been busier. We have all these new deadlines. We have all these new processes. So they're telling reporters and stuff, wow, it's a whole new area here, huge changes. But it's all just scaffold moving. It's rearranging the deck chairs, right?
And governments are notorious for this, about mistaking progress for result. Or process for result. Yeah. So we've put 14 new layers of process on you. You've never worked harder.
We've never been busier.
Yeah, we've never been busier. Yeah.
The pace is frantic. And then like, are we digging mines? No. Yeah,
exactly.
But my God, the PCO has just been frantically working. So we'll see. I don't know.
We'll see. Anyway, like and subscribe. We're going to talk about American fascism, authoritarianism, tyranny. Take your pick, which great. I'm sure our commentators will love, as they always do. And then in our final segment, we are going to talk about Alberta's sort of attempts to purge public school libraries of sexually explicit content. That one's going to get spicy. So do like and subscribe and follow us after the break.
For hundreds of communities across Canada, forestry is a lifeline, supporting 200,000 workers, $87 billion in annual revenues, and $37 billion in exports, $29 billion to the United States. But it's more than just a driver of our economy. It's key to addressing some of our biggest challenges. We need an action plan for our forest sector and its employees, one that will help build the homes we need with Canadian wood, reduce the risk of wildfires, and create more family-supporting jobs right here at home. To learn more about what forestry can do for Canada, visit ForestryForTheFuture.ca.
Well, this will be a fun one. Every once in a while, it's exciting and entertaining to take your audience and split it into two equal warring halves, and then just set them at each other. I want to talk about American fascism. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I read an article this week by an author I respect. I'm going to blank on the pronunciation of his name, Garnet Graff or something. He's a professor. And the reason I follow this guy is because a few years ago, he wrote what I actually think was the best book about the 9/11 attacks. And I know that seems weird. It's a real page turner. No, it's an oral history of 9/11 from various perspectives and various participants. And I actually interviewed the guy on a radio show I was hosting then. I thought he was a really smart guy, really smart writer. And I've been following his writing ever since. And he wrote a piece recently asserting, oh, and by the way, for people who don't know him, he's not a raging lefty, because I know that's going to be the automatic, oh, yeah, what is he? That's some prog. No, I've always found his writing to be, writes mostly about military and strategic affairs. I've always found him to be right down the middle. I could not tell you by having read all of his previous stuff if he was Democrat or Republican. And he wrote a piece talking about how America in recent months has tipped into fascism. And my immediate reaction to the headline was, no, it hasn't. Just no, it hasn't. Like it hasn't happened. But I read his article and I found it depressingly persuasive. And the point he was making is that a lot of people judge the current moment against where fascist regimes end. You know, they end with the U.S. blowing up the swastika at Nuremberg, or they end with Il Duce slung up from a lamppost. But they don't look at the period where it was beginning. And he says,
forget that the period at which it begins can span several years,
decades, even sometimes, right?
Decades, yeah.
So he, like, whether it was Franco in Spain or Mussolini in Italy or Hitler, and at the time a broader array of Nazi leaders in the late 20s and 30s in Germany, there's a moment when a republic or a monarchy or whatever it happens to be, often a very flawed one, tips. And that's what he was writing about. He was writing about the tip point where, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm still not 100% convinced. But what I've been wondering is what the red line would be. And the reason I bring this up is because a few months ago when Trump was reelected, you wrote a great piece. And I don't remember if it was a column or a dispatch blurb. Whatever it was, even if it was a dispatch blurb, it wouldn't have been under your name, but you wrote it. And I want to give you the props for it. What are the red lines? And I was really thinking about that because I had a fascinating conversation this week with I guess I call him a friend, I guess. He is someone who was breathlessly telling me 5 years ago that he was incensed because City of Ottawa bylaw enforcement officers had written tickets for people who were who were in parks during COVID lockdowns. And he was like, this is fascism. This is the state is being oppressive. This is fascism. And that very same human being is now celebrating the fact that Donald Trump has ordered National Guard troops into major U.S. cities to take on law enforcement duties. And he thinks it's great. And I don't know how to reconcile reality with someone who thinks that bylaw enforcement, heavy-handed, stupid, and ultimately withdrawn, is fascism, but using state militias to enforce the law in your cities isn't. And it just basically occurred to me, Jen, that we're in a place now where no one is actually going to assess anything based on the facts. They're going to assess it based on what conclusion they would like to reach.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, this is why I wrote that piece when Trump was first elected, because I just said, take stock of your red lines now. Because what's going to happen is that the things that that 6 months ago you would have never in a million years supported, you're going to find yourself supporting. You're going to find a way to justify it. And that's what's happening. Like, right. I mean, I went to, I got caught up on a YouTube rabbit hole, and one of the characters I follow on YouTube is one of these sort of former New Ager turned far right, types, right? The Wu to Q pipeline in active and full force is what they call it. And this person's like, everything's great. Like, the crime's down. The president's taking the illegal immigration seriously. The economy's firing on all cylinders. Like, everything's fucking awesome. And just know the problem with especially the National Guard taking over the National Guard stuff, in addition to the fact that the second a kind of a federal state takes over or manages to co-opt the legal and legitimate use of violence over a population, it's kind of game over. Like, your fascism has fully loaded. You're now hitting that tipping point. Is generally that
Look
line.
At the download circle going.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
The
download circle going all the way over. So there's that. I mean, the vast majority of people in Nazi Germany were not negatively affected by the Nazis.
Well, until a bit later.
Well, until a bit later, right? Until the war started, really. For the vast majority of people in Nazis, they looked at what was happening around them and thinking, well, this is great. The economy's come around, trains running on time, crime's down. Like, it was awesome for the majority of people. And that's why it was effective. That's why it was able to take hold, right? A similar kind of thing is now happening. And I think it's very interesting to watch how many times I talk to Americans and I get the sense that it's like frog and pot. It's just a bubble. It's a little warmer, but it's fine. We needed it to be a little warmer in here anyway. The problem, especially with the law enforcement stuff.
This hot tub is great.
This hot tub's great. I mean, I'm not getting cooked. Well, you're not getting cooked until you are the one getting cooked. And even in a worst case scenario, it's probably not you who's going to get cooked. Realistically. The other interesting thing about all of this is, there's no dispute that taking an absolute tough on crime, bring in the National Guard approach, crack down to high heavens, will have a positive impact on crime. Mm-hmm. I have no dispute. I don't doubt for a single second that that's actually going to work. I don't question that. And to me, that's one of the real lessons to take away for liberal democracies. And that is, if you don't take things like your institutional duties, including the enforcement of law and crime, seriously, there is a certain point at which the population is just going to latch on to absolutely any solution to feel safe again.
Yeah. David Frum said years ago, and I've thought about this a lot, he says, if liberals don't defend the border, meaning the southern border, the fascists will.
And that's what's happening, right? So when the liberal institutions fail, this creates a gaping hole for which non-liberal entities can take over those institutions and metastasize, right? And what the right here is doing is infinitely worse than the initial failure. I don't fail to acknowledge that what Trump is doing is worse than what the wokes ever did, and by infinite margins. But these guys would never have gotten a toehold in the first place if the failures weren't real. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard thing for people to come to terms with on both sides of the equation. So, like, look, it's not that calling in the National Guard is going to be ineffective at quelling crime. I think it will be effective at quelling crime in places like DC. The question is, what are you paying for that quelling of the crime? What are you giving up to stop the crime? And could there have been a liberal democratic way to go about it without paying those costs? The answer is yes. That is the point that I'm trying to make here. So, I think they're on the train now. I still can't tell you how far that train is going to go down this path, when it's going to stop, when it's going to turn around, what's going to be normalized and what's not going to be normalized in the process. I don't think anyone can predict that at this particular juncture, and I certainly don't. But I do think it's worthwhile to come back to that idea that I posited a couple of months ago, and that is, if you're okay with this, okay, you're okay with this. I accept that you're okay with this. Ask yourself what you would not be okay with. what would be a sign for you that this had gone too far? Is it Trump third term? Is it refusing to hand over power? Like what is your red line at which you will acknowledge that this has tipped over into something that's not democratic anymore, no longer a Western liberal democracy? Write it down for yourself, put it in an envelope,
send it to us.
Send it to us.
Yeah.
You know, like come back to that question, and we'll open those envelopes in 6 months, and we'll open those envelopes in 18 months. We'll open those envelopes in 24 months, because I think what's happening right now is it's the people who are around Trump know what they're doing, and they're being very smart. They're slicing off these very thin slices of the salami. It's just a little thin slice. It's just a little thin slice. It's just, well, you know, the salami was a little moldy there anyway. It's just a little thin slice. Just a little thin slice. Yeah, and before you know it, you're something that you didn't ever think that you wanted to be. And it's very obvious to see this happening from my perspective. Like it's patently clear that this is happening. So
just this week, someone told me, it was like verbatim, yeah, I don't support this, but Biden was senile.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'll be sure to remember that as a black bag descends over my head.
Yeah. But Biden was senile. I mean, this is the classic butter emails. Meme, right? I mean,
I remember
people will do anything that admit that they were wrong. No, ourselves included.
Yeah, no, look, we're not exempt from human nature, but what I think is remarkable is how good human beings are at convincing themselves they were never wrong. Like, it's one thing, and it happens sometimes, where you're caught with your pants down. Someone's got you dead to rights, and you're stubbornly insisting, no, I'm not wrong. I never said that, or what I meant was down. But there are other times when people gradually come to be the exact opposite of what they sincerely believe they are.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense in their minds. And I was thinking a moment ago where you were talking about how kind of up until the strategic bombing campaign and the eventual arrival of the Red Army, a lot of Germans would have thought of Nazism as being associated with cleaner streets, more jobs, increased prosperity. Absolutely. And one of the things I was thinking about, I was saying at the beginning,
decadence.
Right? One of the things I said at the start was people remember it by how it ended, not by how it started or what the midpoint was.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking here, like the average North American, when they think of living in a fascist state, they think secret police, death camps, privation, war, goose stepping. And it doesn't always look like that, at least not at first. At first, it looks like we're taking extraordinary powers to deal with a problem temporarily. And yeah, we wouldn't have normally done this, but like, what, do you want crime on the streets? And Biden was senile. And you talked about that slice of the salami. Every time they take a slice, they don't take another slice immediately. They pause and they yell at people for having been, soft on Clinton for her emails. And then they attack the left-wing media for a story they got wrong. And then they take that other slice. And there's a political playbook here, and it's working very, very well. I have been consistently unimpressed by the Democrats in rallying an effective immune system response.
Yeah, completely useless.
Just epic duds. Just completely friggin' useless. And there was an article, part of the Garnet Graff article was where he basically said, I don't know if we're tracking towards like a Hungary or a Third Reich. You know what? Here's the thing. I think
it's probably closer to Hungary, like, to be fair. Yeah.
I also think any American reversion away from democratic norms is going to look unique. Because America's unique. It's a big friggin' country. Yeah. Like, it's going to take on...
You're not going to be able to just copy and paste some historical example and say it looks exactly the same. It's not going to look exactly the same. Also,
You know,
America's big and decentralized, man.
Mhm.
Like it's
yeah,
a
and there
hard
may well be
place.
states that lean the other direction, right? And you just go, yeah,
Yeah.
you know what? We're not doing any of this shit. One of the things I just thought was interesting is, in general, you and I have talked a ton about how ineffective Canadian law enforcement has been in recent years. And
Mhm.
I 100% get the clean up the streets instinct. Like I really, really,
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
But I pulled up just a chart using US federal statistics of what the most dangerous major cities are in the US by homicide rate. I admit not net number of homicides, but the city you are most likely to be murdered in. The top 15 were all in red states.
Mm-hmm.
None of those states are getting National Guard troops sent in.
No, that's not the point. Of course, it's not the point.
The point is a power flex.
Yeah, the point is a power flex. As I said, my concern in all of this is that people are going to look at what's happening in the United States and be like, see, anybody who's calling for cleaning up the streets or more law and order in the streets is actually falling to a fascist impulse. And my answer to that is no, you have it exactly ass backwards. If you want to preserve liberal democracy, you best damn well make sure liberal democracy is working effectively. And that means making sure people feel safe in their homes and on the streets within the boundaries of democratic law and order norms, standards, and criminal procedures, right? Like, I don't think it's appropriate to clean up the streets by literally shoving people into the back of vans and shipping them off to El Salvador. I'm not down with that. But if you continue to allow a criminal justice system to fail people, eventually that's what they're going to call for. And that's why I think it's important for people who are not fascist to stand up to make sure that institutions work the way that they're supposed to be working and make sure that social contract doesn't get decayed to the point where people start calling for more authoritarian measures. So that's my other issue. I mean, do you want to know the two of the red lines that I'm going to watch for, Matt?
Sure.
Okay, so do you remember last year a couple months ago for Trump's birthday, there was that military parade? And the military parade was an absolute masterclass of malicious compliance.
Dozens and dozens of people showed up. Yeah.
Showed up. And like the way that they had structured the military parade was designed to make it look as pathetic as humanly possible. Right?
Pentagon bureaucrats getting a laugh.
100% that was.
Yeah.
That was absolutely 1000% malicious compliance. Okay? You know that we're over a line and we're in a really dark place when the next military parade is real. That's going to be a line to watch. Second point is watch for the creators of South Park to get arrested or seriously persecuted by the state. Those would be two of my we're done now conversations.
You know, you saw a few days ago John Bolton.
Mm-hmm.
His house got raided by the FBI.
His house got raided by the FBI.
Long-time Republican, but not someone who ever bent the knee to Trump, and his house was raided.
Yeah, they're going to go after the wrong conservatives
First.
Before they go after the left.
Yeah. I don't even watch South Park. South Park's one of these shows that's been on for like 30 years, and I've probably seen 3 episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're asking for it, and I think that's good. But yeah, you're right.
I think some of the stuff that there was a very, very awful cartoon where they had like Donald Trump's penis in. It was very, very immature and funny.
That was one of the 3 episodes I've watched. It was put for free onto social media because they were like, not only are we publishing this, we're going to make it impossible for people not to have an opportunity to see it.
It was great. To me, that was extremely hopeful because that was one of the first effective signs of resistance that I've actually seen in America. I was like, yes, good for you. You're saying, fuck you, I will not be governed. And I love it. But if things go to the dark place and if America doesn't pull back the train eventually, they're going to have to flee the country. So I'm watching for that. Flee the country or they're going to get arrested. Something like that's going to happen.
It was funny because...
And the pretext will probably be bullshit. Like it'll probably be like they were caught drunk driving or something, or their house was raided for drugs or something like that. But they're gonna come under judicial scrutiny of some kind.
The news media will be first under national security grounds, document sharing, things like this. Reporters are going to get arrested and subpoenaed to reveal sources.
They'll go after the comedians first. They'll go after the comedians first. They'll watch for the reaction. I'd go after Trey Parker and Matt Stone would be the first ones I'd go after.
Parker and Stone. I was trying to remember their name. I remember Trey and Matt, but not Parker and Stone.
And as I said, my guess is that as I said, the pretext will be criminal. Like, it won't be like, we're coming after you because you offended the president. It'll be something like, we raided your home and we found pot or something like that. But so just enough of deniability.
Salami slice.
But if it's a salami slice. That's right, salami slice.
Yeah.
But no, the news media, if they successfully do that, then they'll eventually start coming after targeted people within the news media, like problems. Salami slice there. That's how it'll happen. That's my guess.
I was thinking about your comment about how fascism works for people till it doesn't. I was thinking about that because did you ever? I wrote a whole column about it. Did you see the movie that came out a year or two ago, Civil War?
I didn't see it, but I mean, I read all the commentary about it. But
there's this scene where basically, so it's a movie depicting a civil war in the United States, and it's a really interesting movie because they give almost none of the background of what caused it all. The entire movie is the perspective of like a news team that is trying to cover, as war correspondents, they're trying to cover an advancing army composed, interestingly, of a California-Texas alliance, which is advancing on Washington, D.C. To purge a president who has, I don't remember the exact details, but it shouldn't be in power anymore, has like refused an election and has commanded parts of the military. So parts of the U.S. military have basically stood down and refused to fight. Parts have stayed loyal to the president, and parts have defected to California and Texas. And it's a news crew that's following the rebel forces as they advance on Washington. But there's this scene where they're in like a small town that is completely untouched by war, except that it has like perimeter defenses and snipers and observation posts. But inside the town, their attitude is, we're keeping that unpleasantness out. We're like, life is going on as normal here. Yeah, by all means, have lunch, you refuel your cars, and then move along. Like, we're not doing that here. And I was just thinking about that because, like I said, people remember fascism for how it ends. And I think in a lot of people's minds, their red line is, I will be living in a fascist state when my life becomes unpleasant. Yeah, when there's suffering and privation and destruction and poverty and despair and degradation, I will be living in a fascist state. So they're looking around right now and they're like, I just had dinner out.
Streets are clean.
Streets are clean.
Nobody's
Power's running. Water's running.
It's
great
amazing.
films on Netflix.
What's the problem? Economies kick in.
I'll do my second reference. Taylor Swift got engaged this week. This couldn't be a fascist country.
Well, I mean, never mind that you can no longer really trust the Department of Labor statistics to actually know what your economy is doing, because of course that's the point. But to me, the economy feels like it's fine.
CDC leadership fucked off this week on mass.
Well, whatever. I mean, my life's fine though. I'm not going to get the measles. Like, whatever. Things are going great for me. And that was literally that's the thing I think people don't understand, is that throughout the rise of the Nazi regime, throughout the rise of all authoritarian regimes, they manufacture their consent because for most people, it's fine and even better until it's not.
So we understand the fact, Jen and I are well aware of the fact that we have changed 0 minds in this segment. Yeah. Not a single mind has been changed, but we will make a request. Put in the comments what your red line is.
What are your red lines?
What would it take before you'd go, maybe those annoying Canadian broadcasters were right? Write it down. Show us. And then in 12 months, maybe next Labor Day, something to look forward to. Maybe next Labor Day, we open some of them, and we'll keep it anonymous. We won't reveal your name. We'll do first names only. We can read what some of these are. Pop us an email. You can send emails to info@readtheline.ca or lineeditor@protonmail.com. Subject line, my red line. And we'll open them in a year.
Check it out. All right. On that note, like and subscribe, and then we're going to talk about sexy books in Alberta schools.
This episode of The Line Podcast is also brought to you by Airbnb. To solve the housing crisis, Canada needs 5.8 million new homes by 2030. And while some think short-term rentals like Airbnb are taking homes away, that's just not the case. Because, according to Statistics Canada, the number of Airbnbs that could be converted into long-term homes amounts to only 0.6% of Canada's housing stock. How can you solve the problem when you're focused on less than 1% of the housing market? To learn more, visit airbnb.ca/closer look.
Okay, welcome back, Matt. So Alberta doing Berta things. So we haven't talked about this very much, but there's been an ongoing controversy in Alberta. The education minister has put forward this list of saucy books that are showing up in elementary schools. And there was initially, this started a couple months ago with like trying to get parental feedback about these books, about how parents actually felt about these books. And this has sort of progressed to an inevitable sort of ministerial order to the school boards. No book materials that have explicitly sexual content should be in school libraries. Okay. And back when this originally came out, I went through the supposedly explicit materials, and I would generally tend to agree that they were in fact explicit. There was a couple of titles, for example, that were like graphic novels. They dealt with fairly heavy, mature themes, LGBTQ themes, and not just like LGBTQ acceptance, but like sexual LGBTQ themes, stuff that like as a parent of young children, I would tend to broadly agree probably shouldn't be in an elementary school library. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have so much of a problem with it in a high school library because it wasn't like porn. It didn't reach the standard of what I thought was porn. There was a literary and a sort of a cultural significance to the way that the sexually explicit themes were dealt with. So I would have no problem with it in sort of like a 9 to 12 context. But as a parent, yeah, I would tend to agree probably doesn't belong in an elementary school. We know there are thousands of books in school board elementary schools. It would not at all surprise me or shock me if some books that maybe probably should have been more carefully vetted wound up in there. I think that would be normal. But what I think was interesting was that this particular provincial government, taking its cues from culture war bullshit down in the States, decided to call the banners and turn this into an issue, rather than just sort of quietly going to the various school boards and saying, we just maybe think this is inappropriate. Can we review this a little bit? They've decided to turn this into an all-encompassing issue around education. Probably not coincidentally, Matt, we're also looking at a teacher strike in the near future. There's labor board issues. So this is a great distraction, right? Get everybody riled up about the naughty graphic novel. And, you know, let's ignore classroom supports and classroom sizes and disparities around and agreements around wages and stuff that's actually, you know, real and meaningful. Nonetheless, this is very much taken from United States culture war bullshit. They've decided to turn this into a political issue. So this week, this comes out. This is very funny. The Handmaid's Tale among more than 200 books to be pulled at Edmonton Public Schools. So the Edmonton Public School Board takes this sort of overbroad ministerial dictate against sexually explicit content in books and creates a review of 200 books that the school board has deemed sexually explicit, including The Handmaid's Tale, Brave New World, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Perks of Being a Wallflower, 1984. So they went right through the list. And anything that had sexually explicit material, they identified as needing to be banned from school libraries. And of course, this list of 200 books just happens to have been circulated to media and social media in order to generate...
Congratulations, Government of Alberta. You just banned 1984.
Exactly. Right? Like, it's actually classically Canadian passive-aggressive bullshit. It's fantastic. Well played, sirs. And also, to be perfectly blunt, even though I can acknowledge that it's passive-aggressive bullshit, holy shit, do you
clever.
and the Alberta government deserve it? So...
You know, it was funny in the second segment, we were talking about the trajectory of the U.S. Republic. Mm-hmm. Can I blend the two topics briefly to note that the last holdout of any resistance will be librarians?
Oh, God bless them. And you know what? God bless librarians for their for understanding the role of their institutions. And I would say, like, when sort of identitarian and liberal leftism was on the rise, it was librarians who put stakes in the ground and was like, nope, this is a public space where ideas can be discussed and debated, even ideas that run counter to what's the prevailing trends in the left. And God bless librarians for hopefully being the same standout as the.
Yeah.
They're one of the shining lights in liberal democracy for being able to withstand extremist political currents and for understanding and maintaining their mandate and authority. And God love them and God respect them. However, I mean, I would inject a tiny bit of nuance into this conversation in the sense that, like, I don't think an elementary public school library necessarily needs to have access to absolutely every single book. It is appropriate for school boards to curate the content in an elementary
100%.
school library. It's appropriate for them to not have sexually explicit material in an elementary school library. A school library is not the same thing as a general library.
Library.
It's a school library, right? We expect them to be providing some degree of curation there. A public library, different conversation. I mean, I don't even know what their policies are, to be honest with you. I should look into this. But like, I generally expect almost everything to be available in a public library, but I notice when I go to the public library meant for adults, I don't have like an adult porn section. Like, that's generally speaking, they show.
And you've been looking.
I've been looking. Like, I'm not finding the XXX, whatever. I'm not going to even offend my listenership by making a joke about that. But, there's no back room in a public librri. Like, there's no
behind the curtain. Yeah,
there's no behind the curtain in a public library.
1990s VHS rental stores.
So like, I think there is room for nuance around curation, right? And like, just because something might not be available in the public library doesn't mean you can't get it on Google and Amazon nowadays, right? Like, we have an extraordinarily expansive access to an enormous amount of content. I do think we can have a nuanced conversation around curation. I do think it is, appropriate for parents and school boards to say, you know what, this book is maybe a little over the line for a second grade kid. That conversation is valid and fair. But the provincial government decided to turn this into an issue, so they're getting burned on it, and I'm here for it. Good on you, librarians. Good on you, school board.
I'll make a broader comment about this. I'm going to ask you, Jen, I'm going to describe a scene, and I'm going to, listeners, viewers, close your eyes. Let me describe it for you. You're walking down a dirt road going through a forest. It's a beautiful day. Birds chirping, sunshine, blah, blah, blah. You come to a fork in the road and there's 3 paths. One of the paths is labeled good governance. One of the paths is labeled higher fundraising this quarter. And there's a tiny little footpath between the two. It's just labeled both. We live in an era where all the incentives for our politicians are to always go to that path that's next fundraising quarter. And we see it happen again and again. I have seen, look, whenever we hear these library stories, I just roll my eyes. Like, I've been doing this long enough to know that, like, this is like my 5th iteration of the library purges. There's nothing new here.
Because a book's always going to slip through the system, man. Of course it is.
Someone recently actually sent me some pages from a book that was in a Canadian school library that I looked at. I'm like, yeah, that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we burn the book or that we arrest the author. I think we moved that one to the high school library, not the elementary school library. And it was trying to tackle what I'm going to call sort of LGBTQ issues, body positivity issues, all these things. I understand what they were trying to do. It was not put in the age appropriate location. And I am pretty much the opposite of a prude. Like, I'm quite libertarian on these issues. I don't care. But I was like, yeah, you know what? The Concerned Parents Coalition, or whatever the fuck they were called, they're kind of right on this one.
Sometimes they got a point. Yeah. Sometimes they've got a point.
What is required here is for governments to go down that path of that three-pronged fork in the road here, which is both. Do the good governance of getting 10% of the books that probably shouldn't be there out, or refile them at a higher age level, and then maybe, if you must, fundraise off of it. Option 2 is to go down the good governance path, correct the excesses of the cultural swing to the left of the last 15, 20 years. Correct some of the excesses. Do not compound the excesses. Just correct them. Again, I have no problem with the curriculum review. There is undoubtedly things that had gotten through that shouldn't have. Unfortunately, we live in an era, and this is not a right wing, left wing, or centrist problem. This is an omni problem where the politicians are going to go down the good fundraising quarter path every time.
And hopefully we can try and negotiate some kind of good governance between the perpetual war between crazy people. I don't know.
I said a few years ago during COVID, and I heard recently from someone in government about a few months ago who basically pinged me and said, he said to me, do you remember tweeting this during COVID? And I said, like, vaguely. And he says, I think about it almost every day, which was nice. But what I had said was that civilization right now feels like you are the hostage between two different psychos who both robbed a bank at the same time. And we're all sitting on the lobby of the floor. We've all got our hands behind our head. And I'm looking at the different psychos who both chose to rob the bank the morning. And they're not only attempting to rob the bank, they're now trying to rob each other. And there's just a bunch of people who just needed to go in there because like their debit card needed the PIN reset. And we're all stuck in the middle.
And that's how you get that scene from Civil War where you have the nice town that just doesn't want to get involved. Come and fill your truck and buy your shirt and then get out.
They just want to reset their PIN. And
they
just happened to be in the bank the day the two totally different, like, Liberation Front terrorists, but representing totally different causes, both showed up here. Look, there were 100% cultural, political, and social excesses that led up to this moment of right now. If the conservative response had been to reset things 20 to 30% back towards the center and kind of reestablish some normalcy, clean up government, fix the things that are broken, I would have signed up for that so eagerly. But I think, Jen, you and I have the misfortune or the fortune, depending on how we look at it. We know these people. We know a lot of them personally. We at least know them professionally, or we have gone to libraries and we've read these books. It is possible to have controlled, reasonable, moderate resets that fix problems without causing new problems, but it's rare. And I've looked around at the politicians on offer at every order of government in this country, coast to coast to coast, and in other countries. We don't have those personality types.
Well, and the thing that's making me very frustrated is when I hear people on the left basically try to retcon the last 5 years. That really frustrates me. Well, you're taking one incident at a school totally out of proportion. It's like, no, I'm not.
No.
Like, stop trying. Just because what's happening now is on the right is much worse, as bad, or much, much worse, does not mean that there were not excesses in the past. I'm just ready to put a pin in it and move on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that was, I'm not going to get caught up fighting last year's war here, man. Like, it's over now. Now we're focusing on the new thing. I get it. And now we have to be a moderating influence on that particular swing of the pendulum. It's all good. But I just feel like everybody tries to retcon the past, and as a result, nobody learns from their mistakes. And as a result, everybody perpetuates the same mistakes over and over and over again. Like the same conservatives who would be horrified if the left were doing what they're doing right now would just like,
great.
They think it's great now.
Yeah.
And like I can't. And then maybe this is the fallen nature of humans, right? Like maybe this is why we can never have nice things and we're perpetually stuck in these god awful pendulum swings forever and ever because we're fallen creatures. You know, we're terrible, terrible things. But I just, I get frustrated with everybody. I'm getting frustrated with the right who aren't recognizing that they're becoming the right woke. They're becoming every single bit as authoritarian and illiberal and nasty now that they have the momentum in their direction as what they criticized people in the past. And I'm getting frustrated with the left who are like, the woke thing was never real, never happened. There was no cultural excess. What are you talking about? This whole counter-reaction, this whole reactionary movement came totally out of a vacuum that had nothing to do with us. And we take no ownership or responsibility for dismantling or undermining the liberal institutions that allowed this stuff to take root. And I'm just like, I hate all of you. Like, I just want to change my PIN.
There was a meme years ago. It's a little profane, but it's the Line podcast. We can get away with it. It was hilarious. What it basically was just said, while reaping. Yes. Yes. No, hang on. No, I fucked that up immediately. It was while sowing. It was yes. Yes. This is amazing. This is the greatest. While reaping. What the fuck? This sucks. This is awful. No one with the possible exception of you or I, who are fairly moderately grounded people, no one craves moderation and norms like the person who has just lost the initiative. When you have the initiative, you are all about, this is a unique moment in history and it's time to right the wrongs.
Cracker Barrel, goddammit. It matters.
We're going
Bring
all
down
in.
Their fucking stock price. Put old timey Mr. Herschel back on the logo. We'll show you.
The moment your side loses the momentum and initiative, all of a sudden everyone's a moderate. Everyone wants guardrails. Everyone needs institutions. Okay, we'll end on this. I'm not going to prolong the podcast here, but just one question for you. How much?
Can I just caveat that one more thing? Because I know lots of people are going to disingenuously read that. I'm not failing to acknowledge that what's happening in the United States as a result of Republican shift toward authoritarianism is way worse and has the potential to get wildly worse than even the peak excesses of the of a liberal progressivism. I think that's true. Moving on.
What percentage of the population do you think is like us, being actually fundamentally wired to want to be like whatever your personal politics are? I don't care if you vote NDP, Liberal, or Conservative, but what part of the population's percentage of the population do you think actually likes moderate institutional norms?
Do you want to know what? I actually think it's the majority. The problem is that the majority aren't passionately engaged, and the world belongs to the people who show up.
That's interesting.
And we don't show up.
I was going to basically say there's 20% like us, roughly in the middle, 20% on either side of us who are kind of like us, but they have like a strong lean one way or the other, and 20% on each flank that's just batshit. But so you're 100% right.
But that's 60% of the population.
The flanks are where 90% of all the energy is at the polls. Always has.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, look, I think we probably make up 60% of the population if you include that wide a scope. The problem is that 60% population is fucking useless.
Yeah.
Like, we don't donate to causes. We don't show up at the local primaries or the local constituency association processes. We don't go door knocking. We don't volunteer. We're useless because we're normal people with lives and responsibilities.
See, when you say it that way, it sounds like a bad thing.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a bad thing until it became a bad thing.
Podcasting counts, right? Like we're doing our part.
We have a unique place in the social ecosystem, but it makes us kind of influential, but especially useless.
It's a tagline that I'll put it in our sales deck.
Influential, but especially useless. I mean, look,
for the right advertiser, that might be what they're looking for.
Well, look, like Matt, are you volunteering at soup kitchens? Are you leading petitions? Are you like? I'm happy. Like, I did it on the line to write about the petition that's trying to counteract the separatism in Alberta, right? Like, I'll feature it. I'll write about it. I'll report about it because that's my role in the ecosystem. But I'm not going door to door down my community getting people to sign a petition. I'm not engaging in, and vast majority of people, even if they are engaged a little bit, they're engaged in a way that's slacktivist, right? Oh, sure, you'll write a little essay on your Facebook profile, or you'll be shitty to one of the bad people on Twitter. You'll engage in that. That's easy. There's no consequences to that.
I give money to charities, but I don't leave my house.
Yeah, you're a normal person.
Yeah, I assuage my guilt with regular monthly donations.
And this is why we don't rule things. We don't show up. The people who show up are the people who are passionately engaged about not having dirty graphic novels in the library. God damn it!
I donate regularly to my local soup kitchen, Jen. I'm a good person.
No, you're a normal person, Matt. So am I. We're normal.
Honestly, I'll settle for that. I'm not going to get a better offer today.
There you go. All right, on that note, I think we should put a pin in it. Like and subscribe. Check us out, www.readtheline.ca. Come, join our clan of normal people. Sort of.
We didn't say we're good. We just said we're normal.
We're just normal. We're just ordinary people. All right, love you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.